for all of your mobile money transactions, instant fund transfers. You can pay bills as well. You can purchase airtime or data for Airtel, MTN, Glo, and Vodafone accounts, and so much more service available to you from First Atlantic Bank. So welcome to the Purple Experience on mobile. It is safe, secure, and very simple to use. First Atlantic Bank, refreshingly different.
Yes, and we want to say a very big thank you to Adrianipa for feeding us yesterday.
That was lovely, wasn't it?
Yes,
yeah,
it was.
They sent us a nice little variety.
They did. So thank you very much. You can follow them on Instagram, Facebook at Adwanipa. That's the spelling. Ghana is Adrianipa, but the spelling is Adwanipa Ghana. Facebook, Instagram.
We actually believe that is
Aduanepa. So it's Adriane, but I'm saying that if you want to get the spelling right, Aduanepa.
If you want to spell it right.
Anyway, so the Ghanaian Times.
That's how to spell Adriane.
Adriane.
Aduane in English, but it's in P. Adrianepa. Why?
Name little reason.
So the front page of the Ghanaian Times is where I'm starting from this morning. EC pilot voter registration exercise successful, but the Western region suffers a technical glitch. Include COVID-19 testing in yellow cards, as the GIS recommending the churches reluctant to congregate for worship. Majority prefer virtual services to protect members from COVID-19. And on the back page of the Ghanaian Times, regional minister blames massive flooding of Ho on lawless residents.
Well, so Proverbs 28 verse 25.
Yeah,
a greedy person stirs up a fight, but whoever trusts the Lord prospers.
I can't wait for the headline.
COP money swindled by confidence trickster. $50,000 V8 vehicle involved. That's actually the banner headline of the Chronicle. Use of old voter ID card is tantamount to flawed register. That's according to Mr. Simon's Shanti Regional Minister. When males and males tango over males' death. That's a bit of a piece by Ebo Kwanzaa. And 5,908 aliens intercepted since border closure. Back page, Ronaldo tops highest earning athletes on Instagram during lockdown. Messi, Neymar closely behind. And Tyson Fury claims Wilder only wants to fight him for money.
Okay, so on the front page of the Daily Guide, NDC readies for voter register. Over 3,000 recover from COVID-19. Conference center collapsing. That's according to an engineer. And of course, the big headline on the front page of the Daily Guide: voters register. NDC battles the Attorney General and EC today. On the back page of the Daily Guide, government lifts partial restrictions on sports, and that was from the minister's press briefing yesterday. And COVID-19 bites 25 players and staff of the Ukrainian national team. That's it for the Daily Guide.
So the New Crusading Guide says government signs 500 million euros Western Rail contract to construct rail line between Takrady and Huni Valley. And voter register brouhaha. Nothing wrong with NDC's participation. That's according to his General Secretary Johnson Asid Nketia. And Paul Edichun's family fights conspirators over $40 million asset in Guinea.
Okay, the Business and Financial Times. Poultry farmers push for regulation of imports. Egg glut pushes farmers to slash price by 20%. 500,000 crates of eggs set to go bad. Farmers are ready to lay off workers. 1 day, 1 egg campaign unveiled. A lot going there with the poultry sector. Fisheries sector sees growth over 3 years. Experts are calling for investment and government policy. Oil marketing companies to increase petroleum prices by 14%. Bust margin and ex-refinery price major factors. The world must draw inspiration from COVID-19 effects to address climate crisis. And that's it for the Business and Financial Times.
The Business Finder says IEA backs BOG's 10 billion government bailout. Calls for judicious use for intended purposes, and cabinet approves strategic investor for Commander Sugar Factory, and mining quarrying revenue improves by 70%.
On the front page of the Daily Statesman, we need new register. Kufuor rallies support for EC's impending fresh voters registration. That's it really for the Daily Statesman.
It doesn't add that Kufuor says that the current ID card should be part of
the registration process. Yes,
what's that about the Temampakadan rail project, though?
Well, it's 60% complete, apparently.
Is it because of the pronunciation of Mpakadan?
Let's move on to your last paper. You like that?
She actually skipped the Adaklu story in the Ghanaian Times.
Oh, no.
I saw it. I just kept it to myself. But the Daily Graphic is the final one that says, fix these death traps, and talks about an abandoned manholing codes right after the first bridge at the Kaneshi market. And if you have a copy of the Daily Graphic, you can see it. Strategic investor for Commander Sugar Factory. Cabinet approves deal. Park Agrotech to invest $28 million in 3 years. And Parliamentary Committee okays Constitutional Instrument 126. An NPP Council, a National Council, endorses Akufo-Addo flag bearer for 2020. Back page, Manganese Bauxite Way Bridge, 85% complete, and 14 suspected land guards arrested.
What was that about 1 egg a day anymore?
1 day, 1 egg.
1 day, 1 egg. You know,
1 egg, 1 day.
As soon as
1 day,
said,
1 egg.
As soon as he said it, I saw K Fresh saying, just one.
Yeah, he's a regular egg meko.
You know, K Fresh is on a campaign against exercising. Like, he doesn't like it too. He doesn't like that sort of nonsense, exercising then. He's on a one-man campaign against it. Somebody asked K Fresh once, have you ever fasted? He said, yeah, I fast every day between meals. All right, so this is what's on myjoyonline.com this morning. Thanks to the online news review brought to you by Zenith Bank in your best interest and Goyle Good Energy. I'll do the headlines quickly before I tell you about the amazing thing that Goyle is doing. This is not an NDC battle, as Sidun Ketia Court's support for stance against voters registration requirements. That's on the top story segment of myjoyonline.com. Also, NHIA probes radiotherapy units of Kolebu, Konfanoche, for charging cancer patients unapproved fees. This is, of course, as a result of Kwete Nati's expose. CityNewsroom.com has this. We have enough space and teachers as final years return to schools. That's according to the Ghana Education Service, and their Director General has a photograph with this story. Nanado to be acclaimed as NPP's presidential candidate for 2020 polls is also on citynewsroom.com. CNN has former generals condemn Trump. And yeah, quite a number of former generals have lined up to condemn Donald Trump's use of the military to clear peaceful protesters so that he could come out and take a picture in front of a church with a Bible. All right, BBC News Africa has... Winston is shaking his head. Isn't that your man? Anyway, Nigeria to reopen airports for domestic flights. That's already happening here in Ghana. Nigeria
they're also opening up their entertainment industry so that they can shoot their movies.
Oh.
Yes, and that was in the paper yesterday.
Interesting.
Because there's a demand for news. I guess it's helping people, deal with COVID-19. So they're
want
opening
to see
up
more storylines along.
Yeah.
So, that'll be interesting. So you'll probably see actors in masks and so forth.
No, we'll see when they release the first COVID-19 movie. Which I'm sure should be any day now.
Kumawood will follow swiftly, I'm sure, with COVID parts 1 and 2. Anyway, all right.
Kumawood has problems.
They have issues?
Yeah.
Oh, dear. All right. Well, let's settle for some stories today.
Exactly. So let's get into the Daily Graphic. An NPP National Council endorses Akufo-Addo as flag bearer for 2020. So we're told that the NPP, National Council has actually endorsed that President Akufo-Addo becomes the party's flag bearer. And you're talking about the acclamation earlier. But one other thing the NPP also, decided on yesterday when they met is that the parliamentary primaries in 168 constituencies will be conducted on the 20th of June 2020. Now, the NPP has 169 sitting MPs, but in Ayawaso West Wuogon constituency, it's been decided that Lydia Al-Hassan goes unopposed. Of course, there are other constituencies where members of parliament are going unopposed, but primaries will be held in those constituencies. Right. And so on Saturday, 20th June, the NPP goes to the polls to select, parliamentary candidates for election 2020.
Is that an endorsement of Lydia Hassan, or just are they trying to save some money? What's the idea there?
Well, so
she only recently, relatively recently, became MP for the area, Ayawaso West Wuogon. So is it just to save some cash? Is that why they are sidestepping the democratic process, or are they simply endorsing her because there's no one better?
Yeah, so, she won in a by-election in 2019. And with precedents, what normally happens is that if you go through a by-election, a year or two to elections, you're normally allowed to continue,
right?
And represent the party in the next election.
Okay. That's an NPP thing, or just a general? It happens in all parties.
In the NPP,
right?
Persons who, in the Tiwa case, for instance, Kwesi Amwakwata, after that went unopposed. So it's something that has happened in the NPP. So it looks like that.
That's an interesting concept. I don't know what you two think about it. Unfortunately, we lost the president in this country, and when former President Atta Mills died, John Mahama became the president, right? Not through an election, but about a year after that, it was time for an election, and we didn't say let's save money. John Mahama ran in an election, did he not? Did he not have to contest for flag bearership either?
No, he didn't contest within the NDC. Okay. It was more of an acclamation. So in September 2012 at the Kumasi Sports Stadium, John Mahama was popularly acclaimed by the NDC.
Right. Nobody stood against him.
No, nobody stood against him. So,
but was there an option of standing against him?
Well, there's always that option. Political parties open party nominations and say you can contest. Except that in 2015, when the NDC was going to the polls at the time, was it George Boateng, this man who wanted to contest against John Mahama? He couldn't get the chance to pick a form to contest. So that was it. What has happened is that normally when you have a sitting president
suspended for trying to give him forms.
When you have a sitting president
sanctioned, I don't know if they were suspended.
When you're a sitting president, you normally wouldn't contest a sitting president prior to his re-election bid, apart from 2011 when Anakunedo Ajman-Rawlings contested against Professor Mills. I
think the point I'm making is that there was always the option.
There's always the option.
Nobody was he wasn't sort of preserved and told. They didn't make a rule that you cannot contest him. But it seems that that's what's being done in Ayasu West Wuogon. Am I right?
Yes, that's what. For Ayasu West Wuogon, the decision by the National Executive Committee is that she goes unopposed. But parties also do decide, because in 2004, Haruna Seku, one of the papers, said that the party has decided that Mr. Kufuor runs unopposed. Right. So there are some of those decisions also.
Yes. I understand acclamation. That's when everybody is asked, and they all say we want this one. But a decision by the executive is also slightly different, and that's what's happening at Ayasu West.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Moving on.
Well, something else that's happening is churches are reluctant to congregate for worship now.
Isn't that fascinating?
It is quite fascinating. So we know that the restrictions were eased a little bit. We've gone through that, so I'm not going to go through that again. But some of these churches, including ICGC, Destiny Empowerment Chapel, Spirit Life Revival, Makers Way, have decided to continue having virtual services in order to protect their members. The National Chief Imam also released a statement. So the mosques will be open. What he's asking for is that the major prayers, when they meet, to have the major prayers at the major mosques, he's asking that people try to avoid that and kind of just stay at the community level mosques, especially for daily prayers. For the Friday major prayer, stay at your community mosque, try to observe social distancing. And then also when it comes to the everyday prayer, he's also really urging, Muslims to follow the preventive directives. So mandatory wearing of the face mask, checking the temperature, washing of hands, personal mats. It's advisable. So he's saying that don't use the mats that are provided, or let's take that away from the table. Come in with your own mat, so that you're kind of creating your own space and not sharing. Appropriate social distancing. He's also asking that all mosques be fumigated before they are opened. So that's what's happening with the Muslim community as well. And it's interesting because before the church, the restrictions were eased, we're getting a certain sort of subliminal pressure. There seemed to be a pressure, open. And now that, it has been opened, you find that a lot. I got a communique thingy from my church, as well, that we're actually not going to open either. So you're kind of guessing that a lot of churches are not opening. A lot of people I'm speaking to are not going to go to church. So I'm wondering what the pressure was. Was it the taking away of the choice, or now that we have the choice, we're like, okay, we're actually not going to do it?
I think you have to pay attention to where the pressure was coming from, and you will realize that it was from the more organized church groups like the Christian Council, and they were the ones who put together protocols and first approached government and said, look, if you open up, we're ready. If you open up, we're ready. And that is perhaps what fed into that illusion of pressure, if you like, that churches want to reopen. But I think there were, even back before the president announced the lifting of some of these restrictions, there were some churches that said, for example, ICGC, that said, well, not ready, you know, it's not the right time. And there was advice to other churches that, you know, hold on, don't be in a hurry. So I think it's about where it came from, isn't it?
And talking about where it came from, and we've been watching the tourism industry. Today, the minister is going to speak on that. And we've had these conversations over the past few weeks about how that sector has suffered with about 3/4 of staff being laid off and so much money being lost. I remember when I went around to some of the hotels and spoke to, you know, the managers, and they would say they only have 2 guests or 3 guests. They're keeping the hotel opened for 2 or 3 guests, you know, lights on, water running, paying all those bills. So it'll be interesting to hear what the minister has to say in terms of that. And obviously the Drinking Bar Association.
Well, you know, the thing is that drinking bars still remain closed, nightclubs remain closed, but now you can actually, you know, sit-in services at restaurants are available now. What that means is that people could always hide behind a few things without you know, up to do a lot of things.
But it also means that you can go on a date.
Yes, you can. You can if you want to. But the issue now is that, you know, at the time that the lockdown was announced in March 2020, the tourism minister, Barbara Otinjesi, you know, is quoted by the Ghanaian Times as having said that it was anticipated that the tourism sector was going to lose $170 million over a 5-month period as a result of these challenges that the sector was going through. Because one, you have, you know, a ban on flights, international flights in and outside the country. You don't have domestic flights. The challenge is that even with domestic flights now, if I can resort to Zoom, why would I want to fly for a meeting when I can still have that particular meeting? Lots of facilities have closed down because you can't open for just 1 or 2 persons to come in there. How do you ensure you're able to pay your you know, staff? So it's really challenging, and would want to know some of the measures that we put in place for the reopening. But the other thing that we must also acknowledge as a people is that following COVID-19, a lot of things are going to change forever. Whoever is going to go to even a restaurant or you know, say a guest house, you have that element of fear. Who was here before me? Did they, you know, disinfect this place well enough? There's always that fear. So a lot more people would resort to private, you know, stuff. Let me stay in my house. I mean, as much as possible. I wake up at 3 a.m. and I'd want to prepare my own food before coming to work. Sometimes, if I could, you know. So the challenge is that these hoteliers and persons within the hospitality industry should recognize the fact that these are not normal times, and these things might stay with us for a very long time.
So we can go on dates, eh?
Yes, according to the president, you can. You can go into a restaurant and sit down there and have a bottle of beer or you know, whiskey if you choose, and some.
I feel like greeting someone. Anyway, moving on.
So, just a quick George Floyd update. The whole world has been watching the United States, and we know that an additional charge of second-degree murder has been, what would you say, given? Has been charged? Has been given? Leveled against, leveled against the officer who pinned him down. An arrest warrant has been issued for the 3 other officers. They've also been charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder, and they have been charged also with second-degree manslaughter. All of these things were not happening over the past few days. But President Obama, ex-President Obama, has spoken as well. And let me just read to you what he said. He says, as tragic as these past few weeks have been, as difficult, scary, and uncertain as they've been, they have also been an incredible opportunity for people to be awakened. It's a moment to change America and to make it live up to its highest ideals. Whatever has happened over the last several weeks is challenges and structural problems here in the United States have been thrown into high relief. They are the outcomes not just of the immediate moments in time, but they're the result of a long history of slavery and Jim Crow and redlining and institutionalized racism that too often have been the plague, the original sin of our society. So President Obama speaking out, and then obviously there's also the story of President Trump going into the bunker, which he says is not true. He just went to go and inspect it. Conveniently so just, at this time, just to make sure that it was fine.
So he, the president, went to inspect the bunker. Yes. There's no housekeeping in the White House anymore.
Maybe they had gone to protest. Who knows? So that's what's happening with George Floyd. Good news about the charges, though.
All right. Yeah, indeed. Okay, then. Let's have the BBC News is brought to us by Fidelity Bank. Believe with us and Shell Club. Get more.